Hello, podcast listeners. We know podcasts are a great way to catch up on a program that you may have missed on KSJE, and it's provided as a free service of this radio station. But you know, KSJE is now listener-supported, and so while you enjoy this podcast, we hope that you'll also take some time to join KSJE. Become a member today. It's quite easy to do. Just go to our website at ksje.com/support and pick the level of support that best matches your budget. Thanks again for listening. Here's your podcast. 12 minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Tuesday morning, the 24th day of June, 2025. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Michlin. Thanks for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM over the air here in San Juan County, New Mexico. In Durango, Colorado, I know you know that we broadcast at 103.3 FM. And if you're listening to my voice from anywhere else on planet Earth, you've gone to our website to do that, streaming all the time from ksje.com. Welcome also to our viewers who are joining us this morning, because the video of this program is streaming out live right now to the KSJE Facebook page and also to our YouTube channel. So welcome aboard, everyone. So glad that you are with me, because coming up, we're going to be talking about journalism and the court system and much, much more with my guest this morning. Debra Mayeux is here. She is a local journalist, but also a local teacher who was selected, one of just 60, to take part in the Summer Institute of the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll talk about what she went through with that and what she's learned and what she's going to share with her students. That's coming up in the next few moments right here on KSJE this morning. Then, of course, it is Tuesday, so our Adopt a Pet Tuesday is coming up today at 8:50 a.m. We'll be telling you about some of the pets available for adoption this week, so stay tuned for that coming your way later on this hour. Next hour, of course, we will make way for Mick Hess. He is the host of Roving with the Arts, our weekday classical music program. It begins at 9:06 right here on KSJE. Don't forget, you can also connect with KSJE on Instagram and Blue Sky and X, in addition to Facebook and YouTube. And if you're a podcast listener, and who isn't these days, you can check out KSJE Podcasts wherever you listen to podcasts. Check it out, subscribe for free, and maybe discover a new local program that you may have missed recently. Outside our studios here at San Juan College, it's a currently mostly sunny morning today, 71 degrees at the moment. We're expecting some partly sunny skies today, maybe a slight chance of a shower or thunderstorm popping up, but today's high 84 in Farmington, 68 and partly cloudy skies tonight. Tomorrow, partly sunny again with a high of 82. Sunshine again on Thursday with a high of 87, 88 with sunshine on Saturday, and back to near 90 degrees over the weekend with overnight lows near 60. Back with my guest with more right after this on KSJE. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, whose vision is to deliver world-class care, making life better for the communities they are privileged to serve. Offering a comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and emergency care services so residents can live life better here. San Juan Regional Medical Center, community owned and operated, here for you.
Ahead, turn right.
Isn't it nice to have a little help getting where you're going?
Your destination is ahead and 300 feet.
When navigating life's challenges, the San Juan County Navigation Center can help you with navigating housing, navigating transportation, navigating medical providers, and more. Learn more online at sjcnavigate.net or call 505-636-7110. The Navigation Center, connecting to resources, empowering lives.
You have arrived at your destination.
Back in Studio A with my guest this morning, as I mentioned, joining me, longtime friend and colleague Debra Mayeux is here in the studio. So great to see you. Welcome to KSJE.
It's great to be with you today, Scott.
Thank you for coming in to talk about your summer adventure, I guess is how we could say it, right?
Definitely. It was quite an adventure.
Right. And so you're kind of wearing two hats today. One, you're an educator, you're a teacher with the Farmington School District, and that is how you were selected for this Summer Institute with the U.S. Supreme Court, right?
I actually didn't think that I had been selected. It all was very happenstance. So I 2 years ago, I was tasked with teaching mock trial. And I said, how do I teach mock trial? I don't know how to do this.
Right.
And then I realized, well, I've covered the courts for I don't know how many years.
As a
First
journalist.
for the Daily Times, then now for the Tri-City Record. And I said, okay, I know how the court systems work. So I kind of turned mock trial into a little bit of a civics class where you
Right.
learn about how all of the courts work, and
Sure.
you learn about the law, and we talk about a lot of local cases that are happening in the criminal world in the class that are high school appropriate.
Sure. Right.
And this year I had a new colleague who came to work with me, and she handed me this textbook, and it was street law, and she said, "This is a really great textbook, you should take a look at it." So I looked at it and I said, okay, so I incorporated that into my teaching. And then I went to their website and signed up for their newsletters. And I think it was probably in January, I got an email that said, apply for Street Courts Supreme Court Institute.
This summer.
Street Laws Supreme Court Institute. And
Yeah.
I was like,
Oh.
wow, I should apply for that.
Sure.
And I thought, I'll just go ahead and apply. It was a very lengthy application.
Right.
There was a lot of writing. They wanted to know the demographics of the school. They wanted to know about the minority populations, about the number of students on free and reduced lunch. A lot of effort
Demographic
went into
info,
it.
yeah.
They wanted to know about my teaching style, teaching philosophy, how I incorporate law into the classroom. And then I also had to have a reference letter from my principal, Kelly Thur.
Okay.
So I submitted it.
Right.
And I also had to prove that I was actually teaching a class that was tied to the law.
Okay.
So I had to send in like a Power School screenshot of my mock trial class so that they knew that I wasn't making this up and that I actually did
Right.
work in
the schools and education
and
and-
had a law class.
Yeah. Nice.
And so time went by, and the deadline was March 1st. And I just kind of didn't really think about it much and thought,
You were worried about
okay,
finals and
worrying about finals,
wrapping up
worrying
the
about
semester.
other things.
Yeah,
and
school year.
about a month before the end of the school year, I was sitting in my musical theater class, and I opened up my email and I started going, oh my God. And they were like, what happened? And I said, I got selected to go to the Supreme Court. And so I, right away, it was a really quick turnaround. I received the email on a Tuesday, and I had to let them know by Friday whether or not I planned to participate.
Wow. Okay.
And so what I learned when I went there is that this is an extremely difficult teacher professional development program to actually get into. And one of my, I guess you could say, co-educators who was there made the comment that he had applied like 5 times in the
Wow.
past and had not been selected until this year. And this was my first try, so I was
Wow.
pretty proud of that.
Good for you,
Yeah.
right? Very exciting. And so you were one of 30 in this first session, then there'll be another session of 30 as well. So
Yeah, the
total of
other
only
session-
60
yeah,
you're picked.
The second session started Sunday
Okay,
of this week.
week.
And there was a week in between.
Gotcha.
So I arrived in Washington, D.C. on June 7th. And that was my first time ever in
To DC?
Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So it was very exciting to be in our nation's capital. And we stayed right near Capitol Hill, right near the Supreme Court. Walked everywhere. I swear I walked like 6 miles every day. It was crazy.
That's DC, yeah.
Yeah.
Or take the subway. One or the
Right.
other. Yeah.
One or the other. There were a lot of people on scooters and bikes, but I was like, no,
Yeah.
no.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so this was again tied to your teaching,
Right.
But I'm sure you'll use some of what you've learned in your other job, writing with the court, for the courts, on the courts, for the Tri-City
Right.
Record too.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So one of the interesting things was that one of the cases that was handed down by so I should go back and explain this. We did a tour of the Supreme Court, and in the Supreme Court, you cannot take photographs in the actual courtroom.
Right.
And so we were in the courtroom. We got to sit there. We did get to go up to the podium and say if it pleases the court, and so that was really exciting for me, because what a lot of folks don't know is that I actually have always wanted to be a lawyer, and
right.
At one point decided to study law, but then decided to study to be a teacher instead. So it was either lawyer or teacher, and I decided to go the teaching route.
Right. I think we have a picture of you at the podium.
Yeah, there.
There she is. There she is, right?
Yeah.
You look very convincing.
Oh, yes.
I would, I would buy your argument.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there
Thank
you go.
you.
Yes, indeed.
So Lee Arbitman, and I hope I'm saying his last name right because I just called him Lee, but he actually founded Street Law, and he kept telling me, you should study law. You really should study law, because we actually got to do a moot court.
Right.
And for moot court, I acted as an attorney who was arguing a case in front of the Supreme Court.
Okay.
One of the things that Street Law does is they actually use real life cases. So none of these cases are made up.
They come right from an actual
cases that have been in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And
Okay.
so we, as teachers, basically acted as students. We learned how to study these cases, how to come up with arguments for these cases, and then how to participate in a moot court in order to be able to take this back and teach it to our students.
Right.
So I was basically the student this time around. Now, next time around, I'll be the teacher teaching the way that they taught me.
Sure.
We had a lot of great folks who have experience with the Supreme Court who came and spoke to us. But back to the journalism question, I didn't mean to
That's all right.
not answer it.
No.
So the second time we went to the Supreme Court, we actually got to go in and hear all 9 justices hand down decisions.
Wow.
And so one of the decisions was Martin versus USA. And Martin versus USA was a case in which the FBI went to a home that they were supposed to raid, but they went to the wrong address.
Okay.
And they actually went into that house and they attacked the family. I mean, I shouldn't say attacked, but they,
Detained.
They forced the family onto the floor.
Gotcha.
They pulled their hands behind their back and, handcuffed them. And some of the family members were injured in this. And then they realized that they were at the wrong house and they were like, oh, sorry.
Got it.
And
Okay.
it kind of reminded me a little bit, now not exactly, but a little bit of the case here in Farmington where our police officers went to the wrong house and the homeowner...
tragic shooting.
It was a tragic shooting. The homeowner actually came to the door with a gun and the police defended themselves, and is what the police say. However, the family says no. And so that case is currently in court. There's
being appealed.
There's a case in federal court, and then there is a case that was recently filed in district court, and that is the Robert Dotson case, and it's the Dotson family. They filed a case, a lawsuit in April, claiming false arrest.
Right.
And so this case really, when I heard Justice Gorsuch start talking about it, I said, oh, this sounds like, something somewhat familiar. I mean, it's different, but it was familiar. But
Right.
I also believe that it does possibly tie in. So I haven't had a chance since I've been back to call the attorneys involved in that case and ask them if that Supreme Court ruling, which I believe the ruling was that the family had the right to sue the FBI and thus sue the federal government.
Right. Okay.
And I think that was what Gorsuch was getting at. And he was very comical, though. The justices were laughing.
Now, there's something you don't hear every day.
He told this story, and when you're sitting in the Supreme Court, you're not allowed to say anything. You're not allowed to make any gestures. You're not allowed to even gasp if something is surprising. And listening to Gorsuch, this story was really funny, and it was about a couple in the I believe it was in the Old West, and how they like had infidelity and gotten angry with each other and were going to get divorced and then got back together, and it was lengthy, but it was really funny and very dramatic the way he said it, and it was entertaining, and the justices were up there laughing, so it was kind of funny to see their human side, because you think of them as being these kind of stoic individuals, and they had a very, very human side to them.
Well, we rarely hear them necessarily when they're not talking from the bench or whatever, or I mean, they do some interviews, and some do more than others. And so maybe we see a little bit of their personality during those times, but really I don't think as the general public we see some of that. So it's kind of interesting that they're showing that even in court.
It was very interesting. Some of the students in the Supreme Court Institute, teacher students, mentioned that Alito and Thomas actually were like leaning back in their chairs and just kind of rolling their eyes a little bit. And we thought to ourselves, okay, are they bored? Is this, is this what's going on? And Kagan and Kavanaugh were very, very astute. They were watching everything that was happening. They were paying very close attention. So it was interesting to see their different personalities up close and personal. And I think that's something that a lot of people can't say that they've experienced.
That's true. But you have now.
I have.
So that's kind of cool. Very much so. And again, there's no cameras in the Supreme Court courtroom, and so, excuse me, we don't see a lot of that. Excuse me, we don't see a lot of that in the media. We see maybe drawings or sketches, but that's about it. So to see it in person and to see that interaction, I think was really a cool experience for you.
It was, definitely.
So you saw, so they made a decision on that case, or were they?
They made a decision on that case.
While you were there,
the decision was that the family had the right to move forward and sue the federal government and the FBI.
And that is difficult on its own as well. There were a lot of things about trying to sue the federal government that doesn't happen very often. So that's probably why it got to the Supreme Court.
I'm sure.
To make that kind of a decision. So that was just one out of a number of cases that the Supreme Court is hearing and deciding on this term. And so with this institute then, were you able to, I guess, go back and maybe discuss that decision or the nuances of the law?
We discussed the decision. We discussed a lot of the cases that are currently in front of the Supreme Court. We discussed the immigration case that is pending, where I think it was filed out of California. They haven't come up with a decision on that yet. It's the birthright citizenship challenge. And then they talked a lot about the Dobbs case, which was the case that handed the abortion issue back to the states, where a state could decide whether or not they wanted to allow abortion to be legal. So that was a big one.
Got it.
We talked a lot about that. There was another case that we talked about that I was very interested in, that the court actually ruled on recently, and it was a case from this year. And that was a case in which a law enforcement officer shot and killed a subject who was fleeing. And the court ruled that it's not legal to well, they didn't actually rule. What they ruled was they handed it back to the state court. And the state court ruling stood that it's not legal to shoot, for law enforcement to shoot a fleeing suspect. Which also tied into a case that's happening here in Farmington at this time, which is the case of Brandon Rowe, who was in a vehicle and was driving. Well, he was not driving. I believe it was his girlfriend who was driving, and he...
This is the case with the U.S. Marshals, is that right?
U.S. Marshals, and we have the video for that, and I do plan to get that video up soon on the Tri-City Records sites. But, Brianna Wilkerson was the girlfriend, and she was When you look at the video, you hear the U.S. Marshals say, "They're leaving." And then you hear him get out of the car and he says, "Put your expletive hands up."
Right. Okay.
Put your hands up. And the car veers. It's not exactly driving toward him. He kind of jumps in front of the car as it's turning to drive away, and then he opens fire on them in the video. So,
Okay.
so it's
Because some of the discussion, I think, has been self-defense or whatever, or
Right.
things like that. And so that's maybe what the video could show, and a judge or a jury, because I guess make a inference of what that does mean, right?
right. So this case really kind of hit home to hear that the Supreme Court had recently ruled that no one in law enforcement should shoot at fleeing suspects. So if Breonna Wilkerson actually was driving away, and the U.S. Marshal himself said they're leaving,
Right.
and then they opened fire after he jumped in front of the car, there are questions, is this something that could possibly end up in court, and is this something that the families of those two individuals will have a chance to possibly win a case, because they and the U.S. Marshals are part of the federal government,
Right.
and the other case ruled that you can sue the federal government. So those two cases together, both decisions handed down this year, really tie into my job as a reporter and two stories that I've been working on.
Right. Yeah. Very interesting. And so this experience, I think, was really helpful, and you got a lot out of it from both of your jobs, right? As a teacher,
Right.
at Piedra Vista High School. I don't
Right.
think we've mentioned that yet. Go Panthers! And also with the Tri-City Record as a reporter who covers the courts and covers police activity and police cases and searches through police records and reports and all of the things that you do on a pretty regular basis for the stories that you write about in the paper.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
And so it's I guess time well spent. You were there for how many days?
So I was there from Sunday to Sunday.
A week or 8
Well,
days?
Saturday to Sunday, actually.
Okay.
And the Supreme Court Institute started Sunday and ended Friday.
I see.
Then I had some time to tour around.
Right, you played tourist.
Yeah,
And
I did play tourist.
I want to point out, this is the group that you were with. These are the
Yes,
other
these are my
teachers
colleagues, yes,
that were there
from
with you.
all over the United States. The closest person to us was from Montrose, Colorado.
Oh, nice, okay.
So,
right. Very cool. But it sounds like, as you said, that they were looking at teachers with different backgrounds, maybe representing different student bodies and ethnicities and geographic regions of the country, to have a real diverse group there so you could interact with.
yes, and it was a very diverse group of educators who had a very diverse group of students.
Yeah,
Right.
which is really cool.
Yes.
And so I imagine you've got lots of ideas floating around in your head about what you want to do with your class this fall and things like
yes,
that, right?
Yes, there's a lot of things. One of the things that we most definitely will be doing is having moot court. And so let me just say the difference between moot court and mock trial.
Yeah.
So when you teach mock trial, you actually are taking a made-up case
Right.
that has been written by someone, and the case is usually a homicide, and you read that case file. It's set somewhere in New Mexico, and there's characters who are witnesses. There's a suspect who's being tried, and then you have your students break up into groups. So I might have one student play the suspect, and he's going to testify on the stand. I'll have maybe one student or a pair of students act as attorneys. We'll have a judge, and then you have a jury. And basically they present their case, and then the jury decides which case wins, if you convict or if you acquit the person who's on trial.
Got it.
And there's a lot of reading involved, but my students have a lot of fun with it. We did 2 mock trials last year, and there's a lot that goes into it, though, because they have to learn legal terms, they have to learn how to read police reports, they have to learn how to interpret evidence, they have to learn what type of evidence is admissible and what type of evidence isn't admissible. They have to learn how to question.
Right.
How do you question people who are on a stand if you're an attorney. What questions are legal? What questions are not legal? That type of thing.
Okay.
And then you have court.
Gotcha.
A moot court is different. A moot court, you actually have 9 students act as Supreme Court justices. You take a real case from the Supreme Court and you appoint 2 students to be attorneys, and those students go over that case and they come up with arguments to convince the Supreme Court to rule in their favor.
Okay.
And then you have court, and it's very quick. It's actually, I think the opening argument is 5 minutes, and then for each side, and then the Supreme Court justices can ask questions, and the students have to be able to answer those questions. So they have to be very familiar with the case that they're arguing and how to answer those questions in ways to convince the justices that they are the best side to win.
Right.
And then then you have the other attorney will get up and present the closing portion of it. It's very short. It's altogether, I think it was like about 15 minutes.
Oh, interesting. Wow, that is short.
And yeah. And then the justices go and determine, they deliberate,
Right.
they speak about their thoughts, and then they come out and they hand down a ruling.
Then you have to have a majority, I guess, of your 9
Right.
student justices to,
Right.
to rule, right?
Right.
Got it.
Exactly.
Do you think you'll be adding some of that then
Oh,
to
I
your
will
class?
definitely be adding moot court.
Okay.
Definitely adding moot court. We'll definitely be adding the critical thinking aspect of how do you read a case, and then how do you come up with arguments on either side?
Right.
And how do you put those arguments in order? Like, what's the most important argument? One of the things that I learned is that when you're looking at a case, you really need to look at both sides. And that's something
No
that
matter
I
what side you're
typically
on,
do.
right? I
No
guess,
matter,
right?
Right. No matter what side you're on, you need to look at both sides. And you need to come up with arguments for both sides, because that's the only way that you can truly argue
Right.
your case, is to understand what the other side is going to argue as well.
Well, sure, and having some of that cross-examination, I guess, ready to go.
Yes.
During the trial,
Right,
so
right.
that's an important thing as well. So really exciting. I'm a little jealous of you, Debra Mayeux, I must say, but it sounds like you've learned a lot, and your students will definitely benefit from your experiences. Before we run out of time, though, I did want to ask you a bit about tourist Debra Mayeux as you were gallivanting around D.C. I've been there a couple of times. I think it's really one of the most beautiful capital cities
It is gorgeous.
in the world. I know there are parts of it that probably aren't so beautiful, like any city, but I'm always inspired and awestruck when I visit, and I imagine maybe you were too.
I
with
was completely
the places
awestruck.
you went.
Completely awestruck. So, as part of Street Court's Supreme Court Institute, we got to tour the Capitol,
Right.
and we got to actually see where the Supreme Court met inside the Capitol. There's actually
Before they built the
2
building.
Yeah, there's actually 2 different courtrooms inside the Capitol where the Supreme Court used to meet. So we
Okay.
went to both of those courtrooms. We went to the House chambers. They were not in session
Right.
when we were there. And then we got to go to the statuary and, the rotunda. The rotunda is just
Amazing.
mind-boggling.
Right.
Yeah. The symbolism really is one of the things that very much throughout the whole entire trip really interested me. There's turtles in the Supreme Court.
Okay.
And those turtles are there because turtles are slow and steady.
Ah.
And you should take your time to make decisions. is
Okay.
The theory there. So yes, the turtle is a very important part of the Supreme Court.
Interesting. You took a
Yeah.
picture of this hallway too there at the
Yeah.
courthouse as well. That's in
Yeah.
the Supreme Court,
That's
right?
right. That's leading right into, like, the court is at the end of that hallway. That's about as close as you can get to taking a picture of the inside of the court.
Before they take your phone away,
Exactly. And they will take your phone away.
right?
They will. One of the other really exciting things that I got to do
Yeah.
was I got a ticket to go to the Washington Monument, go in the elevator, and go to the top of the Washington
Cool.
Monument. That was amazing.
That's really cool too.
That was amazing. And then I was actually supposed to leave on Saturday, and my flight got canceled because of the military parade.
Ah.
All flights were grounded.
Okay.
So I said, well, if I have to stay an extra night, I might as well go to the military parade. So I went to the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army.
Okay.
And that parade was amazing. It was phenomenal. And then the best part, because I love fireworks, is there was about a 40-minute firework display right behind the Washington Monument. And it was, and there was patriotic music playing. It was phenomenal. And you know, I have, in my job as a reporter, had the opportunity to hear a lot of folks who are running for president speak, and I did get to hear George W. Bush speak when he was running for president, because he came to Farmington.
Right.
But he was running for president, and he was president at the time. But I actually got to hear Trump and Vance address the nation during the military parade, and it was very patriotic and moving. And you know, whether you like Trump and Vance or not, they are the president and the vice president of the United States, and it's a phenomenal opportunity to hear a sitting vice president and sitting president speak in person at an event. And it wasn't political. It was basically just, you know, we're celebrating our Army, we're celebrating our military and our country's rich heritage. And so that was great.
Nice. Well, great that you were able to be there for that, too.
Really, yeah.
And experience that. I think, you know, the office deserves the respect
Right.
that every president should get and give.
Right.
And so it's great that you were able to be there for that and to experience some of that and the whole rest of your trip as well. I'm sure it's something that'll make a big impact.
I went to a couple Smithsonian museums,
Sure.
the natural history, saw the Hope Diamond.
Nice.
And the dinosaur, the T-Rex.
Right.
Love that. And then went to the American History Museum and really enjoyed the pop culture exhibit. That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool. You could spend another week there, I'm sure.
I think you could just take a trip to D.C. and just spend all your time at the Smithsonian museums.
Very true.
Oh, the Botanical Garden, too. That was another place I
Good
hopped
spot.
into.
Yeah. Very nice. But now you're back enjoying the dry heat of New Mexico.
Yes.
Because it's a really different type of heat in D.C.
Oh, yes. Yes. It was so hot and humid, but it was also sunny every day.
Win-win. There you go.
Yeah.
That's a good
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
'Cause
I
that doesn't
also
happen
went to
very
the
often.
congressional ball game.
Well, that's right. You did at the ballpark. That's right.
Yeah.
And I think the Republicans won.
They did.
So
They did.
that's what happened
13-2.
It was, a little overwhelming. So that's very true.
One of the funny things was that the Republicans were all in their red Republican T-shirts, and the Democrats were all wearing unmatching jerseys from their home states.
Oh.
So I heard a lot of comments of, well, you know, gee, maybe they'd get their act together if they had matching uniforms, but I don't know.
Maybe.
You know?
Or maybe they're celebrating their individuality. Who knows?
That's probably what it
Maybe
is.
that's what they were doing. But, oh well. What a great experience. Thank you for sharing it with us this morning,
Well,
Debra
thank you
Mayeux.
for having me on.
You bet. And your students, as I said, are in for a treat this fall. So
Definitely.
very good. Good to see you, as always.
Good to see you too, Scott. Thanks.
You're very welcome. Debra Mayeux, my guest this morning. She is a teacher at Piedra Vista High School, also a reporter with the Tri-City Record, my guest here on KSJE. Did you enjoy that podcast? We hope that you did. And if you did, share it with your friends. And if you really want to keep podcasts like this coming, please support KSJE. You can do it easily online at ksje.com.